Hello everybody from Guangzhou in the south of China. I'm here for the 2019 Imperial Springs International Forum, which is a conference organized by the Club de Madrid every year here. And the topic, as always, is basically trying to understand China's vision for the world and for the global order. And the two main themes this year have been international development and multilateralism. So one was just the crisis of the multilateral order, the crisis of the UN and many of its institutions, including the WTO. What are the consequences, the drivers and the consequences of that trend, and how does China see that? And the second is sustainable development. So how does China see the 2030 agenda and the sustainable development goals? And quite interestingly, on the multilateralism point, the Chinese are extremely worried with the demise and the weakening of the World Trading Organization, for example. They're very strong proponents and defenders of multilateralism. They see their success over the last 40 years as a big consequence of the multilateral order. So they're trying to upkeep very fundamental features of that order. Now, whether they're going to be willing to keep up the whole infrastructure, the whole architecture that the US built is still an open question. It seems unlikely to a large extent because they're unwilling to take on a lot of the normative or values-driven dimension of that order, including democracy, human rights, and others, but also because they're unwilling to take up a lot of the provision of global commons that the U.S. used to do in terms of global security, some of the rule-making organisms that the order had. So there's still a big question about what type of international architecture China wants to see. It will probably be more concentrated and respectful of sovereignty, so it'll be more Westphalian, like our scholars would say. It wouldn't intervene in the domestic issues of other countries, but it's still unclear how many of the obligations that the U.S. has or has had will China want to take on. On the sustainability piece, though, it's quite interesting. China has made the 2030 agenda and sustainable development the central feature of its economic and development policy moving forward. So at least in that sense, the Chinese have taken a very dramatic and ambitious step in the direction of fulfilling the 2030 agenda. But the bigger question remains, what type of global order does China want to see? Some people say, well, the answer is the Belt and Road Initiative. In fact, the Belt and Road Initiative is much more an economic and political development plan than a full vision for global governance. Maybe what comes closest is Xi Jinping's Four Eyes, with this idea that China understands that this is an interdependent world, that innovation is going to be key, that it needs to be inclusive, and that's the type of world that China wants to see: open, innovative, interdependent. But there's still a lot of detail that needs to be fleshed out, and it just shows that China is an emerging power that is starting to come to grips with its importance and its centrality to the international order. So a lot of questions, some interesting answers, but more questions than answers. So thank you for listening. Bye-bye, everybody.